Greetings to the queens and, of course, also to the kings who are watching us live this afternoon for the Always a Queen, the Metamorphosis live video podcast or vodcast. I hear that's what they're saying nowadays. They're saying vodcast. I have to get with the trend.
Mm-hmm.
So, welcome in everyone. Welcome to all of the listeners, to the followers, to the subscribers, whether you are watching us or listening to us on Twitter, YouTube, or Facebook. Thank you so much for being here. I can see you guys logging in a little at a time. Welcome in, welcome in, welcome in. Greetings, Anju. You're the first person in the chat section. Anju just announced that she's here. Thank you so much for being here this afternoon. And as you can see, I am not alone today. Today, I have brought with me Dr. Felicia Ivey Toure. Am I pronouncing that
It
correctly?
is perfect.
And she is so many things in my life. I would need a list to compile the number of roles that she plays in my life.
Oh my goodness.
She Greetings, Serene. Welcome. I see you. Thank you for joining us today. So, she's my friend. She sometimes is a confidant, my therapist sometimes. She's a mentor. She's a colleague. She's my boss. She, I think sometimes she might even be my mom. I don't know. It depends on what I need from her in the moment. But
I don't mind one bit.
the good thing about the good thing about the relationship is that whatever I need in the moment, she steps up to the plate and she fills the gap, and I love and appreciate her so much for that. Thank you so much for being here with me today. I am going to give you an opportunity to greet the people. Look what Serene just, before you say anything, look what Serene just put in the chat.
Oh, God,
Serene just typed that into the chat. Serene is watching us on Facebook. Serene says, so happy to see the Dandada, the guru, Dr. Ivy.
I love Serene.
Oh, Serene. Serene, you took the words right out of my mouth, right?
Oh my God. And all greetings to all the yachties and y'all out there. Thank you.
All
Thank you.
right.
Thank you. I've peeped in and watched the metamorphosis, and I love you guys. I think the fact that you talk about change and growth and personal health and wellness, it's just, not only is it spiritually enriching, it fills a void in my life, especially when I see women that look like me doing things that 20, 30 years ago when I started my career, we're not doing. It's amazing. When I started my career, I could count on my hand how many people in the surrounding zip codes were doing this work. And when I see my colleagues now, I'm amazed, I'm happy. I can see a future. So I thank you, queens and kings. Like, I love to see the kings out there taking care of themselves, building themselves, being the role model, changing the narrative. You guys want my heart as a mother to all sons. When I see the queens, I'm just waiting for one of them to get out there and get married now. One of them to go like, you guys amaze me. And I think like today's topic is so right on time. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, and I'm going to learn from you, like looking and listening to the language, even vodcast. When I was coming up, we didn't have these things.
Listen, I am um I am still learning. Let me put it that way. When I started the Always a Queen, the Metamorphosis platform 5 years ago, and it literally has been 5 years, I wasn't doing podcasts 5 years ago. It started off
Mhm.
as a small Facebook group that I created.
Wow.
I just felt the I don't know, motivated. I felt the call to create a platform on Facebook. It was the only social media platform that I was on at the time. I wasn't on Instagram and TikTok and all these other social media platforms that are now here.
Hmm.
I was on Facebook, and I don't know, I just felt moved one day.
Wow.
And I got up and I just created a little Facebook group, and people started liking the page, and I would post daily motivational quotes and, stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that.
Hmm.
And the next thing you know, that little group turned into a movement.
Amen.
More people just started following and following and following. And then the next thing you know, it just turned into a thing. And then during the pandemic in 2020, when the world shut down, I started going live and doing a weekly podcast.
Thank you.
And that is when Always a Queen of Metamorphosis just went, whoosh. It just went through the roof. And then people were like, well, what happens to people who are not on Facebook? How do we get all the daily motivation?
Hmm.
And I was like, oh my goodness. So I had to go and expand. And
Wow.
then I started an Instagram platform, and then I started YouTube, and then TikTok, and then Twitter, and now it's everywhere.
Butterfly, that black butterfly.
It just turned into a thing. Listen,
Wow.
and it's the followers really who have turned it into a thing. It's the followers. It's the fact that people want this type of content.
Hmm.
And I am happy to provide it. I feel very much like I am called to do this work. I don't think any of this is coincidental. I feel
Hmm.
like this is very much a part of what I was placed here on the planet to do. I feel like this is purpose. This is me walking in and fulfilling my purpose here.
Wow.
So I just do the thing. And here we go. And we're going to see where we are in another 5 years.
There you go.
Right. And of course, I started it off. The primary goal was to empower women.
Hmm.
And the platform now has a huge male following as well.
That's awesome.
The kings are here for it.
That's
They're
awesome.
here for it. So we're empowering everybody. So, anyway, all this, you see, all of this preamble that we're doing, and we have
Hmm.
so many things to get into with this topic
It's
because
a heavy topic.
it's
Yeah.
a heavy topic. Today, our topic is unequally yoked. Yes,
Mm.
heavy, unequally yoked. And I thought it was a good idea to speak on this. I've been meaning to bring this topic for a long time. But to be honest, I did not want to do this podcast alone on this topic. I wanted to bring someone on to unpack this bag with me because it's a big bag to unpack.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I wanted the right person or persons. And, it just never came together until now. I guess maybe it's because you're the one who's supposed to unpack it with me.
When you brought the topic to me, I had this visual of two oxen plowing the field. My grandparents had farms, they were farmers. And one of the things that was really important was when you put the yoke on the ox, that they plow the field together. And just one little stray could mess up your crop. And it could mess up a good harvest. You could have to start over again. And time is currency. It's money.
Yes. Yes.
So I'm delighted to join in on this topic with you because time, relationships, and equal partnership, that's currency.
It is. It is. You know, I tell my clients this all the time. I tell my clients all the time that you have to treat all of your resources in the same way that you treat your money.
Hmm.
We treat our money like a valuable resource. We don't waste it. When we are spending our money, we are super careful. We're not investing our money in anything that's not going to yield some good returns. Our money is
Hmm.
very valuable to us. But there are so many other resources that we have in our power as human beings that we waste dreadfully, that are just as valuable as the currency that we spend. And so I tell them all the time, all of your resources are valuable currency. Your time
Hmm.
is valuable
Hmm.
currency. Your energy is
Hmm.
valuable currency. Your
Hmm.
gifts, all of it. And
Hmm.
so you really ought to treat it the same way you treat your money. If whatever you are investing it in isn't going to yield any returns, or it appears to be a waste, then that's not a good investment to be making,
Absolutely.
right? So, all right, unequally yoked. Now, when we hear this term, I know for me personally, and for a lot of people that I have spoken to, this term is often associated with spiritual or religious persuasions, and whether or not the person that you are uh, partnering with or marrying is of the same religious persuasion or religious denomination, and whether you basically have the same beliefs where it comes to spirituality and spiritual things. And that is typically the context in which people discuss being unequally yoked with a partner.
Hmm.
And I have often thought about that because I feel like that is such a myopic way to view being unequally yoked with someone with whom you are meant to spend the rest of your life. Extremely myopic when you consider how dynamic a marriage relationship is
Hmm.
and all of the things that go into making a successful marriage and making a marriage last for, a lifetime until death do you part,
Hmm. Hmm.
as it meant to be. And it certainly goes so much further than just your religious persuasion.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
There's a lot more that goes into it than that. Um, and so I was like, being unequally yoked is not just about whether or not we go to the same church, folks. And so I want us to kind of just pull it apart and look at all of the various ways in which we can be unequally yoked with a partner and talk a little bit about the implications of being unequally yoked in those specific areas. So we actually compiled a list.
Hmm.
Dr.
Hmm.
Ivy and I, we put together
Hmm.
a little list,
Hmm.
which we may or may not be able to get through in its entirety today. And if we don't, it's fine because then we will just come back with a
We'll
part two.
come back. Yes.
Yeah. So we spoke about, firstly, intellectual compatibility or lack thereof.
Mm.
and and how this is one of the things that can make you be unequally yoked with a partner.
Hmm.
Um, so I'm going to let you start us off with this. Let's start off talking about uh, what the psychological dynamic often looks between a couple that is intellectually mismatched or unequally yoked intellectually in terms of the comfort with showing up completely authentically as yourself in a situation like that.
As you're speaking, I'm thinking about the yoke or the contract or agreement. And I'm not quite sure that most individuals approach a relationship as a contract, whether it's formal or informal. You know, when we would write a contract, an agreement, there would be some terms or expectations, some deliverables, and it would have a time frame. And I'm not, as you're speaking, I'm thinking, who takes the time to sit down and say, you know what, I'm going to date this person, and there's a time frame, there's a contract, there are some deliverables that I'm looking to see. Even when we start a job, you start a job, there's a probationary period, a contract, and some deliverables that need to be presented so that we can check the boxes to move forward into the long-term hiring process. And
Wow.
and so as we move into the topic, I'd like to start there, and then move into the intellectual.
Yes. Yeah, no, I like it. I like it. I like it. I just had I feel like about 10 light bulbs just went off in my head because why didn't anybody have this talk with me
Right,
before I ventured,
right.
into relationships way back when, when
Hmm.
you first start the whole dating process,
Hmm.
looking to get married and stuff like that. These are the conversations we need to be having with
Hmm.
our young people. Um, Serene just put a comment in the chat section.
Absolutely,
Such an
absolutely,
important
Serene.
topic for Black women.
Absolutely.
Yes, yes. Wait, that's up to for us to start talking about why it's specifically important for Black women to have this conversation. That's another.
Whole different can of worms.
Yes, but she's absolutely 100% correct. But when you said that relationships and marriages are a contract, they are a contract. They are an agreement that
Hmm.
you come into with another person.
Hmm.
And all contracts have a time frame attached to them
Yep.
and deliverables attached to them as well.
Hmm.
Deliverables that will inform
Hmm.
the duration of the contract, the successful fulfillment of what is required of you within that contractual agreement. Like that is huge. It's
Absolutely.
not romantic. And I think that's why everybody forgets that that's what it is. You're
Absolutely.
literally entering into a contractual agreement with somebody. You agree to do X and I agree to do Y, and together we are partners. It's an agreement.
It's
Maybe
an
it's not
agreement.
written down on paper, but it's an agreement.
Hmm.
And in all agreements, there's a time frame. You
It's
have
a
to
time
deliver
frame.
within a specific time, whatever you have agreed to. And if you do not deliver at all, then well, we need to come back to the table and discuss this. So-
Absolutely.
right? So how how do we approach these conversations in light of the fact that marriage and relationships they're so romanticized by
Hmm.
popular culture and
Hmm.
social media,
Hmm.
and looking at it from this perspective knocks all the romance out of it.
I think that you can be romantic and still have these deliverables. A simple courting process of you showing up for me, preparing conversation that we're mutually interested in, being able to expose yourself and ask me questions. That's step one. We fill out job applications. We fill out so many different things. I have clients who are online dating and all of these apps, but they don't check off the key boxes that mean so much to them, and then they come back disappointed. And that's okay if you renegotiate a contract, but we have to show up with a standard, with a level of insight If we're shopping for a shoe, we know what size we wear, or we have an idea. We can downsize and upsize and sort of play with it, but we know. I think coming to the table and looking at ourselves as a whole person, a person who is deserving, and being willing to ask for what we want. That's how you find that intellectual partner. That's how you find your person. It's shopping.
Also, not very romantic, but true nonetheless. True
Mhm,
nonetheless. We're dealing with facts here on the Always a Queen, the Metamorphosis
mhm,
platform, people.
mhm.
We're not trying to sensationalize or romanticize the facts. We're just giving you the straight up facts here. And this is what it is. Um, Today, just today, I was listening to a podcast by another young lady, a colleague of mine who does a podcast as well, and I was tuned in and listening to her podcast today, and she spoke about a number of things. But what one of the things that I really came away from her podcast was our struggle, our challenge, where it comes to being specific about what we want from
Mhm,
other people, from
mhm,
other human beings,
mhm, mhm.
especially human beings with whom we are partnering.
Absolutely.
We are really, well, many of us are we are challenged where it comes to specifically stating what it is that we want and standing by it and
Mhm,
refusing to accept less. We often settle for a lot less than we actually truly want. And then the reasons for us not feeling comfortable enough, assertive enough, strong enough to simply say this is not what I want. Um, that's a that list could be long. That's a laundry list. Whether it's low self-esteem, whether it's fear that you will end up alone, whether it's pressure socially, culturally, from your family, who knows? A lot of people they end up, especially women, they end
mhm.
up going into something is better than nothing mode.
Yeah.
And so all of this conversation that we're currently having here, where you must specifically state when you enter into the agreement that this is what I want, all of that just kind of goes out the window. If you had to give somebody some advice, a young woman, some advice with regards to tackling that scenario, what would you say to her?
When you use that enough, I'm listening to you speak, and what resonates with me is a ranking and rating process that we're doing in our heads and shortchanging ourselves.
Hmm.
When we're choosing a partner, we write this contract. We have to start with a value. And it might sound a little harsh saying, okay, this is the price I put on myself. But when we devalue ourselves, we give permission for others to do it. They rent space in our head at a cheaper price.
I would like to repeat that for the benefit of anybody who did not catch that last statement. And I quote, they rent space in your head at a cheaper price.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's
It's
heavy.
that's heavy, isn't it?
Yes. Yes.
It's heavy when you see clearly intelligent, IQ intelligent people in relationships with individuals who have no emotional intelligence. None at all. No empathy, no conversation, nothing. But they give them access to a level that person can't manage. It's giving someone all of the jewels and then wondering why they have 20 rings on 10 fingers. It's what are you doing? There's a level of
Yeah,
accountability that starts with us.
yeah, absolutely. So when you get past this point, you get
Hmm.
past this point of, um, you have ignored the looking within yourself. I like how Serene puts it. She says, looking within, identifying what you're bringing to the
Hmm.
partnership, be accountable. So you skip over this part of the process completely,
Hmm. Hmm.
and you are just making a decision to go into a relationship or a marriage, which is supposed to be a permanent contract,
Hmm.
with this person, without having truly assessed
Hmm.
whether or not this person is going to be able to meet whatever needs would have been outlined in that contract had you taken the time to actually consider it and go through it, and really work through that part of the equation. You
Hmm.
find yourself in there now, and you are discovering that you are unequally yoked in
Hmm.
a number of different ways.
Hmm. Hmm.
um, Starting with the intellectual component. How am I navigating that if I am the partner who is in there, and I feel as if I am forced to dilute myself because this person cannot handle me at full proof? I am forced to dim my light a little bit. I
Hmm.
am
Hmm.
forced to bring it down, bring it down because they simply cannot come up and get it because they don't have the capacity. And in order
Hmm.
to make things work, I am required to do this. And if I choose not to do this, because sometimes you try to, you're like, no, I'm going to show up as myself. I'm going to be the authentic version of me. And you are going to get the highest and the most authentic version of me, whether you like it or not. Yeah. But then the person begins to push back because their self esteem and their ego is taking a hit. um, you
Hmm.
know, uh, what am I to do with all of this?
Well, that's when that cap goes on, that corrective action plan. You're sitting there, you start assessing and you recognize something does not work for me. Here's my list, and I'm not feeling like I'm checking the boxes. My personality is I'm going to help you. I'm going to help you help me to help us. We're going to come up with a cap. And again, it's going to be measured. There's going to be a period, and we're going to do it together. One of the things that I find people do well with are plans that they create for themselves. A person may not be self motivated or have the intellectual ability to come up with this plan. But if we sit down together and say, where do we see ourselves, not me, not you, where do we see ourselves in the next year, 3 years, 5 years? Let's talk about it. What is our plan? I've already helped my partner, my mate, come up with some measurable goals. And we're revisiting this. You know what? We're going to buy a car in a year. Okay. Well, what does it take for us to have this car? Well, if you show me that you can't manage the simple goal of getting employment, maintaining a job, well, guess what? That tells me that I'm not going to get the house. I'm not going to have this deep conversation. But quite often, we ask people to get the sweetest fruit off the top of the tree that they can't even manage getting a tomato off a vine. But we sit there and we have these narratives and these self-talk that don't allow us to come up with correct action, those corrective action plans, yet we want our partner to. So again, I take it back to the individual. Back to the individual. Any relationship is work. It's work. It's daunting. It's frustrating. There's no perfect relationship out there. But if I'm plowing for the sweet piece of fruit on the top and you can't even get that tomato, Clearly, the plan is faulty, and we need to talk about that.
I have a question here from Serene. Serene is asking, what do you advise persons on how they can create a safe space for their partner to engage in intellectual activities, museum topics, documentaries, travel, etc. And I
Hmm.
imagine she's referring to a situation
Hmm.
in which there is an intellectual mismatch or they are unequally yoked
Hmm.
intellectually.
Hmm. There's always a commonality. There's always a space where we can be like-minded. I love art. I can talk to you about the most creative impressionist or pop art, whatever. But I can talk to someone who doesn't have this deep palette about the color red. What do you like about red? What about red stimulates you? Let's go to the museum to see how often this color is used. Let's look in our community to see if the bodegas are using red. I've noticed that they're now using black. Black is on all these bodegas. Finding a person doesn't often mean that the person has to have a degree or this wealth of knowledge. What it means is that the person has the capacity to appreciate your liking, your understanding, and you can create that space.
I agree with you. I agree with you entirely. By the way, it would appear that my neighbor has decided this is a very good time to cut the lawn. So if you hear any background noise, that's what's going on. But we will carry on.
Okay.
All right. Okay. So um I like what you said there about you when you specifically spoke to, it's not about whether or not the person has a degree or whether or not the person has has the same academic qualifications that you
Hmm.
do, because
Hmm.
often that is what the conversation comes back to.
Right.
The
Right.
conversation usually rolls back to, are we equally educated? And I
Hmm.
just want to make the point that being on the
Hmm.
same academic level
Hmm.
does not necessarily equate to being equally yoked. Because
Correct.
I have seen that happen as well, where we both have all the degrees in the world, and there is still a situation where we are not an intellectual match. Because let's face it, let's be honest, there are some
Hmm.
highly educated people out here who have zero interpersonal relationship
Oh,
skills. I
so
meet
true.
people like that all the time. I meet
So true.
people like that all of the time. I had whoa, look, Serene says book sense doesn't guarantee common sense, right?
She's so right. Absolutely. Amen, Serene.
He says book sense does not guarantee common sense, and this is the absolute truth. And so we want to make sure that it is not necessarily about the academic qualifications when we are talking
Hmm.
about intellectual um, compatibility, but
Hmm.
rather about whether or not the person has the capacity to appreciate what you
Hmm.
bring to the table, whether intellectually or otherwise, right? And vice versa. Okay. Um, can we speak for a moment about the whole idea of marrying up and marrying down?
Hmm.
Because that's a thing,
Right.
particularly in our cultural community, I believe. We
Right.
have conversations about marrying up
Hmm.
versus marrying down. What in your estimation is marrying up or marrying down?
It, you know, it's changed over the years. I will tell you that. When I was much younger and communities of color and, people in academia, I would see people at my level, we'd say, okay, well, we need to marry someone from what we quote unquote a good family, someone whose family was established in the community, well known, financially secure, marrying up. always looking to increase the wealth and the presence of your current family, your immediate family. So looking to enhance it, sort of like portfolio management. And marrying down was sort of like diminishing your your dividends.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. You sort of, okay, so I'll settle for this for love. But today, what I'm seeing is the currency of time. Time is the currency. I'm seeing that the younger population is not conforming with the traditional marrying up, marrying down. They're sort of marrying for companionship. And I've been seeing this post COVID, where people during, pre COVID, they would marry jobs, they would marry career. All of a sudden now I'm seeing a shift of, you know what, it doesn't have to be this way. We can have a hybrid model. And in regard to my relationship, I am going to look for someone who I am more compatible with, because I have learned that time is my currency. So that marrying up and marrying down has changed. And now it's more looking for that equal yoking with compatibility.
Mm, yeah.
Yeah.
I like it. I didn't realize that post COVID that young people were doing this. I thought young people were just moving in together. I didn't know
Hmm.
people really wanted that, like it was a like an intentional thing where they're
Hmm.
searching out like a life partner or a companion.
Hmm.
Um I don't know. I get a sense that people that young people just they don't want to be alone anymore.
Hmm.
Uh, I don't know. How do you feel about that?
I feel they don't want to be alone, but loneliness, the term loneliness has changed. I don't want to just not have anything. Don't want to be idle. My priorities have now shifted. No longer am I looking for all of these things I can put on my body and be out in the community. Now I'm looking for experiences.
Mhm.
I'm looking to travel. I'm looking at my currency of time. My parents' values no longer fit into the world that I live in. I do have, I'm the summation of those life experiences, and I have my own opinions, and I carry some of that tradition. But what is not applicable, I'm more open to leave behind. And that's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like that. I think it's very true that people are more in search of experiences now
Hmm.
than they are in accumulating material things.
Yeah.
Buying that house in the suburbs,
Hmm.
with the white picket fence and the
Hmm.
dog and the cat and 2.5 kids,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Versus renting a studio apartment
Hmm.
in which my partner and I can comfortably live. And maybe we will not have 2.5 kids. Maybe we won't have any kids at all because they're expensive. And
Right.
what we're going to do is we're going to work and we're going to backpack around Europe because,
Yeah.
and that
Yeah.
is the direction I feel like a lot of young people are moving in nowadays. And maybe
Hmm.
that explains why the whole idea of marrying up is becoming obsolete
Hmm.
with time because they want different things out of their relationships.
I'm listening to you and I'm thinking of some of my cohort where we we did the right thing. And then
Oh, can we talk about that? The whole idea of doing the right thing.
we did the right thing. And then we realized we attained the degrees and the success, but the markers, the developmental markers of backpacking and seeing Europe and having those experiences, we didn't meet the mark. We didn't meet the mark, but we did the right thing. And now we're going backwards and saying, I'm just figuring me out.
Yeah.
So what about us?
You know what I think though? I think that it's not so much that now our generation, my generation, your generation, I don't know it's so much that we're not meeting the developmental markers of
Mm-hmm.
this 21st century
Mm-hmm.
postmodern world.
Mm-hmm.
I think the developmental markers have changed.
Absolutely.
This is what I think. I think
Absolutely.
the developmental markers looked very different when I was in my early 20s
Mm-hmm.
versus how they look now that I am in my mid 40s. So different. So, what happens is that doing it right or doing the right things looks different now too, because
Yeah.
in 1999, doing the right thing was get the college degree,
Mm-hmm.
go home after college,
Mm-hmm.
find a good husband,
Mm-hmm.
get married,
Mm-hmm.
have some babies,
Mm-hmm.
have a nice house somewhere in the suburbs,
Yep.
and live. That was considered the ideal.
Mm-hmm.
If I would have done that with my
Mm-hmm.
life, I would have met every developmental milestone that was required
Mm-hmm.
back in the
Mm-hmm.
1990s.
Right.
Like, yeah,
Right.
if I had chosen that path for myself, and I kind of almost did, but I would have successfully met all of the developmental milestones that society had established for a young woman in that
Mm-hmm.
time. I don't know that it looks that way nowadays.
No. No.
And so not doing that does not necessarily make you a failure nowadays.
No.
Back then, people probably would be giving you the side eye, like, why has she gotten to be this age and she doesn't have any husband or any
Mm-hmm.
kids? Like, what's wrong with
Mm-hmm.
her? What is she
Mm-hmm.
doing with her life? Right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
No, that's not a conversation people have necessarily.
Right.
Um, and so the developmental milestones don't look the same, which makes it appear that our generation now is kind of just not with it.
Uh,
Like,
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
what are we doing now in 2023?
Well, you're checking the boxes different, and in your search for a partner, I think it's important to ask, do we want to parent? How do you feel to parent? Are one of my sons who's in his 30s, he said, Mom, there are many women out there who do not have children in their 30s and 40s, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that because those that do have may not be in stable relationships, and they may need a man or a partner to co-parent or to be a friend so again, it's changed.
Yes.
The
Yeah.
idea, the term family has changed.
Yeah.
The contract has changed.
The contract has changed. And you know what? I have some breaking news for the women. And I feel like after this podcast is over, I should post this on my Facebook page. Maybe I should post this on all my social media platforms. But here's the breaking news. The breaking news is that you can become a mother at any age. This is a
That's
message
right.
specifically for the queens, not the kings, because I think the kings have already been on to this for a long time. The kings have always known that they can be fathers at any age,
Hmm.
and they have been doing it for centuries. The women, however, have been living in a prison because we have been programmed to believe that when you
Hmm.
get past a certain age, you can no longer be a mother. You're
Hmm.
disqualified
Hmm.
after you get
Hmm.
past a certain age. This is the programming that we have received. Of
That's right.
course, I am now beginning to learn, even me, that this is erroneous.
Hmm.
This is an erroneous school of thought. Because
Hmm.
here's the thing, you can become a mother at any age, just like the men can, you just can't do it the
Absolutely.
traditional way.
Absolutely.
And nobody says that. That's not a conversation that people have. If you want to become a mother, you can do it at any age. You want to be a mom at 60? You can.
You can. Absolutely.
You want to be a mom at 70? You can. There is more than one path to motherhood.
Hmm.
You can do it the traditional way and
Hmm.
get pregnant and give birth and have a baby, but that is only one path to becoming a mother. That's just one. It's just that that's the only one we talk about. It's the
So
only
it's
one we talk about. So if you are 50 and you want to be a mom, you can. You can be a mother at any age. You just have to choose a route. Choose a route that aligns with the season of life that you happen to be in. And you're in a different season once you get past, a certain age. And I'm not necessarily referring to a biological season. I'm talking emotionally and psychologically as well.
hmm
You're just in a different place altogether in your life.
hmm hmm hmm
And I think it's important that we start stepping away from this programming that we have received for so long, that boxes us in and makes us believe that we have to do things a particular way or else we would have done it wrong.
I think that goes with yoking experiences or values that do not belong to us in our narrative, in our story. We sort of bring these things in, we partner with them, we pick them up. I always say, please don't pick up anybody else's backpack and carry it. It does not belong to you. That's
Mm.
not your story. How you see yourself in the future, you need to write that. Oh, Serena said something. Okay. That's nice
The
trauma.
lies trauma told us.
I
I'm
agree.
just saying, these Gen Zs want liberation, and I love it. They're looking to
Absolutely.
heal from anxious parenting that nearly guided them on the path of get your education, right?
You, I'm questioning this. You know, we are here, some of us in the United States, and we're in a climate where people are struggling to pay their student loans back. People are struggling to identify themselves or pick up values and tradition in regard to what parenting or pregnancy looks like, or even if they choose not to be parents or pregnant, what does that look like? It's a whole different world that I dare to say is no longer dealing with antiquated values. And it's scary. It's scary for my generation. It's scary for people who don't look like me, but I'm proud of them.
Hmm. Hmm. Sure, right. Let's pivot into
Hmm.
another area. Look, Serena's following up that comment. What I meant by that is the hyper focus on education, and I did get that.
Hmm.
There definitely was a hyper focus on education.
Hmm.
Go to college, get the degree, and Felicia, we're talking about that today.
Yes.
We were talking about that today.
Yep.
The idea that in many families that is just the culture. Like everybody in this family went and got a degree. If you don't go and get a degree, the rest of the family is gonna be looking at you like,
What's wrong with you?
"What's wrong with you? What you mean you don't want to go to college? What? How can you not go to college? Like it's unthinkable. Like you want to get a different job, you want to take a different path. Like what?" And everybody's clutching their pearls because
Absolutely.
you're breaking the family culture, and it just a hyper focus on education. I think one of the discoveries of Gen Z, as Serene was pointing out, one of the discoveries of Gen Z is that you can make money without a college
Absolutely.
degree.
Absolutely.
Like Gen Z woke up to that fact a long time ago. Like they're not with this straddled with student. loan debt situation. They are with making coins without getting into debt. And they have discovered that you can do that without a degree. And they are doing it. They are doing it. They're making six figures without having gone to college. This is the um what was the name of that guy who created Apple? Um
Jobs, Steve Jobs.
this is the Steve Jobs generation.
Absolutely.
This is the Steve Jobs generation, not like me, who came from the generation that is still suffering, that is still suffering and sitting up at night trying to get this PhD because what? Help, send help. I mean, it's a struggle, but yeah, their ideals are so different.
Their definition of self, of partnership, of and I'll bring it out, of sex and sexuality and sexual orientation are very different than the generations that preceded them. Very different.
Yeah, and that's where I wanted us to pivot into
Hmm. Hmm.
sexual incompatibility, because that's
Hmm.
another item on our list
Hmm.
of ways in which you can be unequally yoked with a partner.
Hmm.
You can
Hmm.
be unequally yoked sexually.
Hmm.
Who knew?
Hmm.
Who knew?
You know,
Because I don't
what
hear anybody having this conversation.
did not I think about a couple of clients that I've worked with who described to me their partners with withholding emotion, withholding sex, withholding comfort, basic comfort as a method of control. And they describe being in these relationships and normalizing it. Okay, I come home and my partner has had a hard day and comes in and goes to bed, has a drink or goes and unwinds someplace or whatever. And I'm feeling guilty or I'm feeling like I'm doing something wrong by advocating for my own physiological needs. You know, there's a whole new level of unequal yoking
Hmm.
that people don't explore prior to the signing of the contract. But the person has shown you things don't work out. Initially, we're dating and you don't call me. Like you remove yourself from our relationship without even communicating with me. And here we are 2 years into the marriage. You get angry with me and you start sleeping on the couch. But you told me that when we were courting. You cut me off. You ghosted me. And I expect something different now. Hmm.
Mm. And the message is, ladies and gentlemen, that whatever is an issue when you are dating does not go away after you get married. It is magnified times 10
Absolutely.
after you get married. It's the issue,
Absolutely.
but on steroids after you get married. That's what it is. That's
Absolutely.
the message. You heard it here.
Well said. But how do you manage that? That's the we see it, we downplay it. Most people think about going into therapy at least 50 times before they make a phone call, even for couples counseling. Like they don't quickly pick up that phone. So how do you manage it? Well, in my opinion, you give it a title. Call it what it is. You want to fix at
Emotional
work.
unavailability.
Yeah.
And that's in the best case scenario. I'm just emotionally unavailable because this has always been the way I showed up, because maybe this is how people did it in my family of origin. This is how I was raised. This is how everyone in my house showed up. We're just a group of very unexpressive, emotionally unavailable people. And so I am now married, and that's how I show up. It may be that. And I feel like that is a best case scenario. That's a best case scenario.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, worst case scenario could be that is not really how I always show up, but this is how I weaponize
Good
my
word.
this is how I weaponize my affection to punish you, because I know no other way to deal with my emotions.
I show up with conditions. There is the conditional me. I'm happy, I'm here. I'm not satisfied, I'm angry, I remove myself. I've been often asked, when does cheating happen? And I say, well, cheating happens when the person leaves the relationship. It doesn't often mean that they're out there having intimacy with other people. But when you begin to consider what life would be like with someone else or doing something else long term without your partner, you've left that relationship. When you're in the military, when you're in law enforcement, there's this collective consciousness. And you learn quickly when you leave the group, there's vulnerability. We act as one unit. It's the same thing with sex. It's the same thing with weaponizing emotions. You put a condition on me that we have not negotiated in this contract. You've cheated.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Um, let's talk a little bit about how uh, sexual incompatibility in a relationship can result from socialization,
Hmm. Hmm.
and culture and social programming.
Hmm.
One of the first things that comes to my mind, of course, is the whole idea that sex is supposed to be functional, which, of course, is what a lot of people may believe, in some cultures, that sex is just a functional component. It is not necessarily for pleasure, but rather for the purpose of procreation in a relationship. Um, and if I am raised in a family that embraces that school of thought, and I end up in a marriage with someone who was raised completely different, how are we working that out? Because that is a high level of incompatibility,
Hmm.
sexual incompatibility. I mean, if anybody's unequally yoked sexually, it would be those two people.
Hmm.
How
Hmm.
do they move past that hurdle?
Hmm. You know what came to mind is the old Lucy and Ricky sitcoms where they were sleeping in different rooms.
I love
On
Lucy.
Yes, I love Lucy. Different beds, or I have clients that make me. They say, "Well, you know what? We have sex with the lights off, or with the sheet over us." And I'll ask, "Have you either of you ever looked at each other's bodies? Looked, discussed the body, become comfortable with the body?" And most of the time, the answer is no. And I dig a little deeper, and I'll ask, "Have you ever explored your body? Do you know what your body looks like in the light, with the light on, looking at yourself without feeling uncomfortable or shame or wanting to fix this, that, or the other?" Most of the time, the answer is no. So when we talk about being incompatible sexually, it starts again. I bring it back to us as the individual, knowing what works and what we feel and what we like.
Yeah.
That personal relationship.
Personal relationship. Know your own body.
Hmm.
Be comfortable in your own body.
Absolutely.
Love your own body.
Absolutely.
Move past any body dysmorphia that you might be dealing with. And if you have if you feel like it is a hurdle that you cannot get past on your own, get help. Sit and talk
Absolutely.
to somebody about it. Get some tools. Learn some skills that will help you to surmount that
Mm-hmm.
obstacle.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because your discomfort then becomes the couple's discomfort, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Um, that in many ways can also be very cultural, because there are some cultures in which it is perfectly normal to be naked, see yourself naked, see other people naked, and it's not a thing,
Mm-hmm.
and it's important to remember that even within each family there's a culture as well. We
Absolutely.
we live in a culture in the country, and within the culture of the country there are other subcultures. The
Mm-hmm.
Caribbean people have their culture, the Africans have their culture, the
Mm-hmm.
Indians have their culture, the Chinese have their culture, and so there are subcultures within the larger culture. And then within those subcultures, there are even smaller subcultures. And within each household, there is also a culture, and
Absolutely.
in some households, it is very normal for people to just walk around naked in the
Mm-hmm.
house. They're not
Mm-hmm.
going to do it outside, but in the house, family members just walk around naked. They are accustomed to seeing each other
Mm-hmm.
without clothes on. And then there are some other families in which that is an absolute no, no, no.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody in the house has ever seen anybody naked ever,
Mm-hmm.
because that is just the culture in their house. I know where when I was growing up, and if my mother is listening to this, mommy, we'll work it out after. I know that when I was growing up, my mother would just she wasn't trying to hide anything. She walked from the bedroom to the bathroom with all their clothes on.
Mm-hmm.
I'm there. My siblings are there. It's not a thing. It's like that's just mommy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We don't
Mm-hmm.
care, you know. Um, and so I know that sometimes it's just the culture that you come from, within your
Absolutely.
family of origin as well, and it has a huge impact. Another thing that I think is really cultural is how much people teach their children about their bodies and about the bodies of the opposite sex as well.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
know some
Mm-hmm.
grown men, and when I say grown, I mean grown, grown. I know some people think when they say grown men, you're talking about 20 something or 30 something. I mean, even 50 something and 60
Mm-hmm.
something. Grown men who know absolutely nothing about the female anatomy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And a note, I am not saying they have never been sexually active.
Mm-hmm.
They
Mm-hmm.
are sexually active, have been sexually active, they have children even, but they
Mm-hmm.
know nothing about the female anatomy.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
you are just like, but how? How?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They don't know. You can't ask them anything about the menstrual cycle. You can't ask them anything about ovaries, womb, the process of getting pregnant. They don't know about the fertility process, when you can get pregnant, when you can, how long does a woman
Mm-hmm.
carry a baby, what
Mm-hmm.
does the birthing process look like. They
Mm-hmm.
don't know anything about the female anatomy. They just know that you have sex with a woman and she could possibly get pregnant and have a baby. But outside of that, don't ask them anything, because they don't know.
But Therese, I'm thinking of even our healthcare providers, the male healthcare providers. My best friend is an OBGYN. And when I used to talk to her years ago about having a male doctor, she would laugh at me and she said, Felicia, you going over there to see that person who doesn't even have what you have. He can tell you how it's supposed to work, but can he tell you how it feels? Has he ever had a conversation with you about sex and sexuality and what it should feel like? And I sat down one evening and I said, she's absolutely right. When I go see this man, I need to be asking him questions and he needs to be able to give me some feedback, not just what somebody told him, but What should I be looking for? How can we make this better for me? I think that when we talk about being equally yoked in sex and sexuality, we as women and as kings need to dig deeper. We need to dig really deep and want to find out that information. How can I please my partner? How can I make sure that I am pleased? And I won't know that until I know what I'm supposed to experience or I have experienced it.
Right. Yeah. Agreed. Have you had any experiences where you have worked with couples that are challenged to even have a conversation about this? Like having
Absolutely.
conversations about what you just mentioned, about ensuring that I am being pleased or that the person is as
Oh,
well.
absolutely. And you know what? I'm always interested in the messaging. What is the self talk? Your partner says to you, I'm not feeling pleased, or I could be pleased in this way. And you receive it as you're not doing enough. You don't measure up. You don't. The biggest challenge I have when working with couples in regard to sexual, issues, all kinds of issues, is what do you hear your partner saying to you? And how do you regulate that? How do you manage it? How do you work as a couple? Because if one person is not satisfied, then neither of you are satisfied. So getting the couple to be on the same page, we could do theory and talk about what Gottman says and all of this other stuff, but the bottom line is, are we on the same team? And what's the goal? If you can work that.
That's an important question. Are we on the same team and what's the goal? Because you made a statement just now where you said if one person isn't satisfied, then neither of the two partners is satisfied. You know, I you know, I have to disagree with that.
Hmm.
I think that is the ideal.
Hmm. Hmm.
I think that is the ideal. That's how it
Hmm.
should be.
Hmm.
I think, however, that there are many instances in which that is not what is happening. I think there are many instances in which only one partner is satisfied, and that partner does not necessarily care whether the other party is satisfied or not. And so it's not impacting them both. It's impacting one person because that person is in a situation where there isn't even a clear understanding of the fact that if both parties are not satisfied, there's a problem. Like
Hmm.
there are situations in which the very posture with which one partner is approaching sex is that this really isn't about whether anybody is satisfied or not. This
Hmm.
is just
Hmm.
about getting the job done.
Hmm.
And so
Uh,
if they're approaching it from that posture,
hmm.
they don't care about whether you're satisfied or whatever. If they felt good about it, great. They're not worried about, okay, was it good? Did you enjoy it? That is not a it's not a discussion.
it's equal to conversations I have with people who have the disease of alcoholism. And someone will say to me, my partner is a functioning alcoholic. And I said, then they're not functioning. They are making movement, but they're not functioning. They may think they are functioning, but they have not maintained capacity. There's something that's not working. So I listen to you talk about, well, this partner has no insight that he or she is not taking care of their other partner's needs. Then they're not getting their whole partner. They may think that everything is hunky dory, but they're not functioning. They're
They're
not on the same team.
They're not. That's true. That's true. The Another thing that I wanted to bring up here, on the topic of sexual incompatibility, is how culture often informs uh, someone uh, being the initiator in
Mm-hmm.
the relationship,
Mm-hmm.
while someone else is just the person who sits and waits
Mm-hmm.
for something to be initiated,
Mm-hmm.
instead of both parties just understanding that it could go both ways, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of course,
Mm-hmm.
this a conversation also helps, and the level of comfort and vulnerability and emotional availability, all those things help. But I think this is heavily impacted also by culture.
Absolutely.
Um, what do you think about this? The idea that, sometimes the level of compatibility is impacted by something as simple as, I am not supposed to initiate sex. That is the man's job.
Right. It's to me, there's a breakdown in communication. If you can communicate, and it doesn't have to be verbal. Some cultures, people are uncomfortable verbally initiating, but if there's good communication and you have insight and understanding of your partner's body, again, being able to look at each other and understand, read the signals, then you can communicate that tonight's the night. I'm ready. Here's a red light. You can make it happen for the two of you without that discomfort. I think as humans, we've become so complicated that we forgot the basics. What does it take to be a partner, to be on the same team? I think it's that.
Teamwork,
Yeah.
teamwork. Okay, let's touch just one more thing, and then we're gonna start rounding up. And obviously, we're gonna have to have a part two for
Yeah.
this,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
this discussion is far from over. But I wanted us to touch on values before
Hmm.
we end this podcast today,
Okay.
because yeah, I'm itching to talk
Hmm.
about that.
Hmm.
Values and how that impacts whether or not you are equally or unequally yoked.
Hmm. Hmm.
We had a very interesting conversation earlier about values and how your experiences and
Hmm.
your lived experiences, where just all the things that have shaped who you have become,
Hmm. Hmm.
and how those inform what is important to you in life.
Hmm. Hmm.
And then you encounter somebody whose experiences have been opposite to yours and who
Hmm.
values things that are entirely different.
Hmm.
Should
Hmm.
I just decide to walk away and not marry such a person? Or could I go ahead and marry them and just figure it out along the way?
I'm a big believer in, we need to talk about this, and before we make this major commitment, we need to be on the same page. I'm that rider. I'm that one who needs clarity. You know, some people will come to me and say, my family values education. My family values this financial status, or this look. You can't be obese. Like, there are these values. And then I say, so what do you value as a couple, as the new unit? What is the value? If there is no way to quantify it, if there is no statement, no declaration, then you are living someone else's story. What is the story for the two of you? I do work with poly couples, and
This is 2023, folks. Get it
they
together.
I do this work, and people come in, they're like, Felicia, how could you? What is wrong with you? And I say, they have a story. Actually, they're functioning better than these couples who have two and saying they're in these monogamous relationships, because they have clarity. They have roles. There are rules. They are co-parenting. There's like all of this stuff that is happening that we as two people are still struggling to come up with our own story.
They have
So
clearly defined contracts.
absolutely. There you
There is
go.
no way you can be in a polyamorous relationship without clearly defining the contractual arrangement between all
Absolutely.
parties. Otherwise, obviously, that's a recipe for disaster.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And in fact, you know, I'm not praising the Mormons, but in some way they've sort of figured out contract, that term contract. Now, there every community needs some work, but I think that we can learn from other communities that have contracts. I am not totally against arranged marriages. All of my friends who started off in my generation in arranged marriages are primarily still married. The community has the buy-in, the families have the buy-in. It is in our best interest to have 2.5 kids. It is in our best interest to share the parenting roles and to have this, all of these arrangements. But it started with a contract or a conversation. And many of these individuals, despite popular belief, are not said to be in these marriages. Some of them are like, this is the norm. Like, I'm good. I know this person is going to provide ABC for me, and I'm going to give EFG, and life is okay.
Understood. Understood. Um, Values also has a huge impact on the way we raise our children.
Absolutely.
This is a big one for me because I know and have sometimes worked with couples as well who are able to see eye to eye on everything, with the exception of how they go about raising their children, the children they
Mhm,
have together. Everything else is fine until it
mhm,
comes to the parenting.
mhm,
And for me, this is a values issue.
mhm, mhm,
It's an issue with their value system. And often couples are taken aback, like they're
mhm.
flabbergasted when you go there and you're like, this is an issue, not so much of a parenting issue, but a value system issue. You do not have a shared value system
Right.
because it is your value system that ultimately determines how you raise the humans that have been entrusted to you. Because
Absolutely.
the primary goal is to pass on your values to these little human beings. And it
Absolutely.
makes sense that if we are going to co-parent, that we must have a shared value system. And I don't think there is anything that exposes differences in values like trying to raise children with somebody.
And having those clear conversations throughout the courting period. Do we discuss extending families, my relationship with your parents, your relationship with your parents? It's really important to have an identity as a couple to develop the value system to parent those lives that come from the relationship. But you have to have an identity as a couple. There needs to be an identity. There's a label of which many couples have not found. Find your label, and then you mutually agree on the language in the
Right.
label.
Yes. Yeah. I like to tell couples that they need to create their own culture within their own home.
Yep, yep.
Your family of origin has a culture that existed in your family of origin. So did mine. We
Mm-hmm,
grew up in different houses
mm-hmm,
where different cultures existed.
mm-hmm.
We cannot come in to a relationship or a marriage and just assume that you're just going to bring the culture of your family and I bring the culture of my family and we just smash it together, and voila, everything is going to just work out. No, absolutely not. Because if we do that, we are assuming that we are coming from similar cultures. What if we are not? What if the culture in my family of origin was opposite to yours? What if there are things that you did in your household that in my household are unthinkable, or vice versa? These are conversations that must be had. And the outcome, or the primary outcome, the ideal outcome from those conversations would be that we are going to determine what you're bringing versus what you're leaving behind, and what I'm bringing versus what I'm leaving behind. And together, there some hybrid will be created, which will become the culture in our house.
And with culture is the development of language. A lot of times I've worked with couples where one home has made it taboo to say, I'm sorry. They don't apologize. But in the other home, acts of kindness and deeds clearly say and mean, I'm sorry. I'm with you, ride or die. And it's when they begin to understand each other and come up with the language in a way that is tolerable for both, that the couple does well and they can co parent. But I think we forget that words are just words, acts are just acts until you ascribe meaning
Mhm,
and language
mhm.
within your home.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I like that. Culture must always be accompanied by language.
Hmm.
I like that. Yes, I like that very much. Let me see if there's anything else I want to bring up before we leave this values discussion. Yes, there is something else I just saw in my notes here. The that sense of shared value in the relationship also is very important, I think, so that you can feel fulfilled
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
satisfied in the
Hmm.
relationship.
Hmm.
I think many times that lack of feeling as if the relationship is really providing what you need, like you're like it's filling that space in your life, so to speak, that
Hmm.
a relationship is supposed to fill, is
Hmm.
because there is a lack of shared values. And I think that that your value system does a lot for you feeling as if as a human you're making some type of contribution to your
Hmm.
society, to the world, to the
Hmm.
forward movement of mankind, like no
Hmm.
human wants to feel as if they're just here taking up space, not
Hmm.
making any contribution at all to the world. Well, maybe
Hmm.
there are some people like that. But for the most part, true fulfillment and satisfaction with your life comes from feeling as if you're making some type of contribution somewhere.
Hmm.
You're fulfilling purpose. You're doing something, you know. And that is very intimately attached to your value system. And being with someone who has an opposing value system and has zero interest in those things is going to rob you of that sense of fulfillment,
Absolutely.
unless you're going to be in the relationship but still be a lone ranger who is out here doing your thing so that you can feel some measure of satisfaction because you have a partner who couldn't care less. They're okay with just lying on the couch and watching TV.
But you will never see that lack of completion and participation in a relationship if you're hurrying through it. I see it like eating food. When you're eating food, if you're mindlessly eating, your brain doesn't have the opportunity to tell the stomach, I'm full. So you just keep going and going until you're uncomfortable. But when you slow it down and you're intentional and you're taking stock and savoring it, and back to that contract, looking and saying, "Oh, this is working. This is what we stand for. We're fulfilled. Wait, hey, babe, hey, like we're fulfilled because we slowed it down and we filled the plate. We did what we needed to do. I think when you rush through, and you find yourself in relationships because they're easy or they're comfortable, you shortchange yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a word. Yeah, young, let me not say young people because I consider myself young. I am young.
Hmm.
I don't care what nobody says. I'm young.
There you go.
Um, but let me say that at the turn of the century generation,
Hmm.
they don't like to hear the word slow. Slow is like indecent language
Hmm.
for
Hmm.
them. This is the microwave generation.
Right.
This
Right.
is the instant meals
Hmm.
generation, instant everything.
Hmm.
This is the
Hmm.
generation that does not peel potatoes because you can buy mashed potatoes in the box.
Oh,
I mean, it's not the same, but
oh.
right?
Hmm. Hmm.
It's true.
It's true.
It's true. And so the word slow, when you say slow, they immediately begin to give you the side eye
Hmm.
because we don't do slow. That is why, you know, these what do you call these reality TV shows where you
Hmm.
go on and you meet your husband or your wife in 10 days kind of thing,
Hmm.
married at first sight and Love is Blind. I don't know if you're familiar with any of these reality TV
Yes.
shows,
Hmm. Yep.
but it's all about skipping the steps. It's what
Hmm.
it's all about. It's all about skipping the steps, skipping over the hard part, skipping
Hmm.
over the part in which character is built and values
Absolutely.
are discussed and contracts are ironed out. All the hard part, they just skip over that and they go straight to this is my forever person.
Unequally yoked.
Unequal,
Plowing.
unequally yoked. Putting the cart before the horse in a big way,
Absolutely.
right? But these are the times in which we live. These are the times in which we live. It is a reality. It's absolutely a reality. Um, but yeah, we are going to continue this conversation at a date to be determined.
Sounds like a plan.
TBD.
Sounds like a plan.
But this was very, very good. This was very good. I am so, so, so happy that you agreed to come on here with me today. I have a feeling that this recording is going to be making the rounds. Um, and I will send it to you as well so that you can share it far and wide with anybody who you think needs to hear this discussion as well.
I think so. Thank you for inviting me, and hopefully we come back soon.
We are. We're going to absolutely come back very soon. We're going to come back on with a part two, because we haven't talked about money.
Oh, the
When we
root.
come back for part two, that's where we're going to start.
Absolutely.
Because money, money is one of the top causes of divorce in the United
Hmm.
States.
Hmm.
Higher even than infidelity. People get divorced over money.
It's a reflection of your value system.
Unequally yoked.
Yep.
Yeah, so that will be where we start the conversation when we come back for part two. And I will I will let the people know when part two has been scheduled. Thank you so much for those of you who have been here watching us. Thank you, Serene. Thank you so
Thank
much
you,
for being
Serene.
here. Serene has been
I
hitting
love
us in the
Serene.
comment section. All right. Anju says, I agree with you about this being your purpose. Thank you, Anju.
I
Thank
agree.
you.
Yep.
Thank you so much for your vote of confidence. Thank you to all of the ladies that have been in the chat section interacting. Um, and I am super happy to be here doing this work. This gives me joy.
It's your calling.
Absolute joy. All right. And so I will be back. I'm gonna drag Felicia back on here with me for a part two sometime very soon. I'm
Thank
gonna make
you.
sure I disrupt her very busy schedule and bring her back.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. So we're going to leave it here for today. Thank you, everybody, for watching us, whether you have been watching us on Facebook, on YouTube, or on Twitter. I give you thanks. I appreciate you because you are the reason why the Always a Queen, the Metamorphosis platform
Amen.
is a thing. Thank you so much to all of my followers and my subscribers. Please share this broadcast if you know anyone, any friend or family member that you think can benefit from this conversation. This is being recorded and it is going to be on the YouTube, the Twitter, and the Facebook page completely free. Nothing is going to cost you anything on any of the platforms. All of the resources that are there for you to download them, share them, save them, make use of them. That is the point of all of this. Do not waste these resources. Capitalize on them, folks. All right.
Amen.
Okay. And this is where we are going to say goodbye. As usual, you know how I like to end all of my broadcasts. Felicia, do you want to give the people any parting words? Do you have any words of wisdom you want to
I,
leave with folks?
I don't have parting words of wisdom. I just think that each day is a new opportunity. It's a new opportunity to develop a relationship with yourself and become part of the universe. I think that's most important. No
Absolutely.
one's
Thank you so much. And on that note, I encourage all of you to be a beautiful week. Bye, everybody.
bye bye.